and so I'm going to kind of skip, you know, a bit of the what you were doing afterwards, and kind of, you know, because I think this would be of interest to the students as well, at least as a preview to what it's like, right, for us as women. You know, most of the time, the reality of, well, you come from a work, you know, you were working regardless of private sector, government, you know, and however you work, but it was work that you were paid. And then at some point, as women, if we step into the full-time parenting role, we are not paid, you know, in the sense that we were paid when we were doing an actual work, you know, even though it's a lot of work for parenting, yet we're not compensated.
Yeah, so, there's no financial reward.
No, and it can be very, you know, because you have a 2-year-old, so it's a very, very fresh stage for you too, right, parenting-wise. And so I wonder how was that for you, transition and... Yeah, what it's like for you then, now, you know, being a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah, it was a huge shift. I mean, they are not dissimilar, being home with a child and running a business in some ways. In the sense that I was, especially running your own business, I think you get very used to, I mean, if I had calculated the number of hours I worked, and then what I actually paid myself or what I took out of the business, I probably was earning less than minimum wage. I mean, you go above and beyond as a business owner in ways that it consumes you. So it's not necessarily that it was so lucrative. However, you and they're a similar workload. Honestly, it's all consuming, both of them. You know, you don't ever really switch off at the end of a day when you own a business. You don't say, "Oh, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done." No. You know, you go home and you just brainstorm and worry and fix problems and, you know, do schedules for staff, and
it's a constant thing.
It's constant, and I think this is a very similar job in that way. It's a 24/7 job. But yeah, like you mentioned, you're not financially compensated, and you're also taking a big risk professionally by removing yourself from the workforce, even if it's just for a year or, you know, or longer until your child is at an age to go to school. I think we have a lot of work to do as a society in learning how to value parenting, but for that matter, lots of other types of social contribution.
Absolutely.
And actually trying to make that, trying to support people in making those choices. Because I think parenting, I've come to realize that parenting is, I think for me anyway, the most important job I will ever have. If I, you know, have even a little bit of influence to shape one person in the next generation of how our world works, that's pretty serious work. You know, it's pretty serious stuff to not be recognized or compensated for.
Yeah. And earlier we were talking about, you know, at least the visible part of being compensated is if you're still in the workforce, you need to take time off, maternity leave, paternity leave. We were talking about the differences of which countries, for example, or which regions would be paid or allowed, you know, time off. And then that's when we were realizing, at least in Australia versus Canada, there's pretty big differences there. Yeah,
I mean, I have always considered Australia and Canada fairly similar in terms of their social supports and you know, we have good public health care in Australia, as we do here. We have good public schools and public education. So a lot of similarities. And I was at a very different age and stage of my life when I lived there last. I wasn't thinking about children and maternity leave. But in talking to my friends back home, I have now realized, I mean, I think it may vary state to state in Australia, but I think 18 weeks is the amount of paid leave, as best as I have heard it, that you get from the government. Whereas here, my maternity leave was a full year, 52 weeks. And since I've had a baby, I think they've changed that. So you can now extend it to 18 months.
Oh,
so you can be home with a guaranteed income, not your full income, but a guaranteed income for a year and a half if you choose to.
That's really pretty progressive. I was also thinking about some of the Scandinavian countries. I remember Sweden at the minimum. They have very good...
Norway too.
Yeah, maybe up to 3 years, I want to say, of maternity leave, and that probably includes father, you know, maybe less time than mother, but still.
I think in Norway, both parents get a year, so you've got 2 years at minimum. 2 is a turning point, you know, 2
Very
years
much
is a turning point. You don't have a baby anymore, you're starting to have a little person, a kid.
Yes.
So.
I remember having this conversation with my doctor. And that's when I realized, yes, you know, at least 2 years is what one needs as a mother, going through so many physical, emotional changes and adjusting to a new little being.
Yeah,
and those,
I would agree.
Yeah, and yet those are the costs that the society is unwilling really to look at and you know, fully acknowledge that we are raising future citizens for the society, right? You know, when you look at it, and it's like there's
no small task,
and no amount of money in that sense can really compensate, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and so yeah, there's
a lot there.
So it's just to wrap up. You know, a lot of the students, the way we were brought up in Taiwan, we're really sort of, you know, having a set path to follow. We graduate from high school, you go to college, and you either find a job or you try to, you know, go for further studies. So, and I kind of see that in other parts of the world too. And so I'm really fascinated and curious on what is that you think you've got in yourself, you know, to help you make a decision where you would just take a very different path from the ordinarily expected one.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of things. I think there's a certain amount of self-confidence that you know you're capable, and that even if you don't know something or things get hard, you at least have have a certain amount of confidence in your ability to problem solve and get through it, and a level of trust in yourself.
And where do you think the self-confidence or self-trust comes from? For you anyways.
I think a lot of it was, I mean, some of it I don't know. I don't know where these things, you know, I don't know where some of this comes from, but I think certainly I watched my parents walk at some point later in their life, much later than me. I think I watched them when I was a young teenager, go through the same process of evaluating, you know, am I happy? Am I living the life I want? Are we raising our child the way we want? What do we want to show her about the world? And for them, that process of reflection led to leaving everything behind in Australia and coming to Canada, where we knew no one and had never been before, and taking a teenager, which, you know what that's like. And I think I didn't know it at the time, but I learned a lot from watching them make such a bold, unprecedented decision, and watching them navigate everything that came up in that, the good and the bad. It certainly wasn't easy, but I think I realized, that's how that's possible. It's possible in your life. You know, if you want to change direction, and you have a burning desire, a call to do something else, you can. It really is a matter of putting one foot in front of the other, and you have what you need in you to make that happen. But I think it takes watching that to some extent, seeing it in someone to know, that if they can do it, maybe I can too. You know.
So it's just very moving to hear, because now imagining you have your own 2-year-old,
I think
and
about
so
it a
you
lot.
know, from you having walked through the path, and also with Barry, he has been also running a nonprofit, and so having to go through all those decisions that you more or less have to go through when you were running your coffee shop. And so it was something where, to look forward to, I imagine, for you as parents now.
I think we've had some, even though we've had very different working lives and different experiences, we share that, I think, a commitment to our lives feeling authentic and purposeful. And I've watched him do that too, working out, what feels right for me and what do I need to do to make that happen. And neither of us are prepared to live lives that don't have that kind of integrity for us. And I think it will be, one of our greatest hopes for Piper, for our child, that she watches that and that she knows that's a possibility for her life, and that I hope we give her the tools, and I hope she finds what she needs inside of herself to listen to herself and to have the courage, because it's scary, to make those choices so that your life reflects who you feel you are and what you want to do in the world.
Yes. Yeah. Jess, I think this would be super inspiring for the students, because they're very much at an age where they're very close to where you were starting your business. And so I imagine this would be very, very inspiring and gets them thinking about that. So really, really grateful for this opportunity. I mean, I've learned a lot in the process as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So with this, I think we wrap up the interview with Barry and Jess, and I'll be seeing you next time. Bye!